Hey, Brett Swartzer, Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Hope you're doing great today. Bringing you a new strategic alliance that's going to help with some returns in regards to our current Deferred Sales Trust investors, clients, as well as those who are also looking at us for real estate investment advisory to help them invest into passive real estate deals. And I'm really excited about this next strategic alliance. They are focused like a laser on what's called land entitlement, taking from zero to hero, in the sense that hero being fully entitled lots for national home developers to buy, and they do it all by controlling land. But before we get into all of that, let's start with this. The national crisis that's going on, one of them is the lack of affordable housing. And affordable housing, by some estimates, we need about 6.5 million homes to catch up, according to CNN. Every single county in the U.S. lacks affordable housing, according to Bloomberg. Every American city has a housing supply problem, according to Jeffrey Haywood at Fannie Mae. And at Harvard University study also found that there's about 30% more demand and rising for affordable homes. So basically what we're seeing here is there's just not enough houses and they cost too much. This isn't a surprise to us who are in the real estate industry, but it does create opportunity for investors and also to do good by helping to be a part of the solution by investing into helping the development of attainable workforce housing. And by the way, it's even worse in the Southeast. And the Southeast is seeing just tremendous growth with migration and new companies coming into the Texas, the Floridas, the Carolinas, the Georgias. These are some of the fastest growing states. In this particular group that we're going to talk about today, they focused on those states alone. And in fact, the Southeast, the deficit's over 1 million affordable homes per state. Some of these homes are Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee. And that's according to the Federal Reserve Southeast Affordability Tracker. So we're seeing a ton of momentum going into the Southeast and with people moving there. And we want to be a part of the affordable and attainable workforce housing any way we can. If you experience here with Capital Gains Tax Solutions, many of you have been introduced to DLP Capital by our team, by myself, and they've been an amazing strategic alliance to invest with. We personally invest with them, myself, my wife and I, as well as my company, as well as many of our clients. And they have found the consistent, durable returns to be excellent. And so DLP Capital is on the purchasing of large apartment complexes. They also build apartment complexes. They also develop apartment complexes, purchase existing ones. They also lend to those that are doing the same and or single family home communities. So where we're going here is we're going all the way back to just even before all of that. And it's the land entitlement place. It's the land before it's fully ready. We call it shovel ready to be used to actually be able to build, right? So it's the infrastructure, it's the permitting, it's getting it through the county and the city and the zoning issues that are associated here. You've got to have a paper development before you can have hard development. And this is what the focus of this group is. And this particular group, their name is BRD Land. In fact, I was introduced to them from a connection at DLP Capital, one of the managing directors at BRD Land. It was a former managing director at DLP Capital. So we have some history there, which is nice. So the other part that I think is really interesting to note here is, how their business model is kind of basically this. They're going to meet with a landowner. They typically own that land for 10, 15, 20 plus years. They bought it at a very low price and they've held it for a long time. They haven't really done anything with it as far as entitling is concerned. They're not experts in this. They could be a farmer. It could just be a land that was inherited from family. And essentially, it's worth a lot of money once it's fully entitled, but right now it's not fully entitled. And so what BRD does is they close that gap and they control the land and they control a contract and they move it to full entitlement to be able to then build on. That's essentially what they do. And so they'll come to the farmer, they'll come to the landowner and they'll say, hey, look, your land's worth about 12 million fully entitled to be able to build 70, 150 homes or so. Would you be open to a kind of like a joint venture in a sense? And that we're not going to purchase your land for a price and then fully entitle it, but we're going to purchase the contract or put enough money in to know that we're on your side to work through the permitting process. And so Typical deal might look like a $12 million fully entitled, ready to go. And the current value, which might be, 1 or 2 or maybe $3 million if they were to sell it to someone else. And what BRD says is, look, we'll put a $500,000 deposit down. We want basically 18 to 24 months. Sometimes they do it in 12 months. A time period to fully entitle this project. We will put our money, our time, our resources, our expertise. We will do the work of working with the local officials to fully entitle this property. And then once they do that, they'll do a double close and they'll sell to like a DR Horton. They'll sell to like Lennar. They'll sell to a Mercy Housing. They'll sell to these publicly traded companies that are multi-billion-dollar companies that will buy it fully entitled. And so this is the key here, right? And then they'll give part of the profits to the original owner who owns the property, and then they'll take the other. It kind of depends on what they negotiate, but a deal might look like $4 million to the current owner, and then $12 million is the exit, and then they have that gap of about $8 million. That gap is their profit. So this is why I really like the deal, right? They're not having to buy the land at $4 million and then speculate to see if they can fully entitle it, and then $12 million they sell if everything lines up, right? They're only risking $500,000 typically, the deposit. And even then they have ways to get out of that deposit. Not all of it's passed through non-refundable, meaning there are benchmarks along the way, and they typically know pretty quickly whether or not this is going to be a high probability of being fully entitled. And so they're not fully risked that 500. In fact, within 30, 60, 90 days, oftentimes, if they feel like it's not going to go, they can pull out and get their deposit back. And there's no actual loss of money. There's some loss of some time and some energy, some resources to go towards that, but no loss of that deposit. And that's the key here. What we're doing and what we've aligned with them is the offer, which is basically to loan BRD money in order to have more of these deposits, more of the growth of the company. They have about 40,000 lots currently under control, is what they say, under contract. So let's keep diving into this a little bit more. I'll give you an example, by the way, of DR Horton and some of these groups. These are, $32 billion. DR Horton's number one, Lennar is number two at $31 billion of gross revenue. And that was in 2022. Polt Group, $15 billion. NVR, $10 billion. Meritage Homes, $6.2 million. Toll Brothers at the number 10 is at $9.7 billion in gross revenue. And so these are very well capitalized groups. By the way, Mr. Warren Buffett has made a big bet on the U.S. housing market, $700 million of DR Horton stock, $60 million in Lennar stocks, $60 million in NVR, Orion stock. So Warren Buffett's a big believer in an investor in these types of companies, okay? So the problem is massive. The numbers are real, hard to make sense of owning land when you buy it, and then the holding costs of owning all that land. But if you can control it, that is the model here that they've perfected. So let's talk a little bit about the company itself. The company itself has a phenomenal team, right? So you can have an idea, but ideas are cheap. It's the implementation of the business plan that makes all the difference. BRD has a proven track record of success. Over $150 million historical gross revenues. Their current land pipeline is over 40,000 lots, and that represents about $1 billion in gross revenue. They've never lost a single dollar for an investor, and they've always paid the people that lend to them. They're experienced land operators too. Their background is tremendous with the people that they have on their team. One of their team members, he's one of the founders. He's got a really cool name here, and his name is Tim Samuels, his senior partner. He has more than 45,000 lots, and what I mean by name is he's earned the nickname of the Godfather of Land, right? So among the leading national home builders across the Southeast. Other gentleman that I've met personally now is Lindsay Jarvis. He's a senior partner. He's actually from New Zealand. He's a veteran in the home industry, 30 years plus experience. And he spent 20 years of those, in the building industry, in construction. He's completed over $40 million worth of commercial residential construction. So he's also a key partner. And then also he's become a friend now. He's a CEO and partner of BRD. His name is Maurice Johnson. And what I love about Maurice, he has over 18 years of experience with the top 5 national home builders like Taylor Morrison and Meritage Homes. So this is what he used to do. So his track record on his model or his role at those groups was to go do what he's doing now, which is strategic planning, execution, sourcing, and developing with these big groups. And so he has now just joined BRD to do that for them. And so he's got a tremendous experience with this, which gives me a lot of confidence in what they're doing. And then the other gentleman I want to point out to you, he's also become a friend and he's an expert in all of this, is Brian Yarnell. He used to be a managing director at DLP Capital, and he's now the managing director of capital for BRD Land. So he brings about 10 years plus of experience in residential, commercial development, housing development space. So he's responsible for underwriting and funding over $500 million of real estate developments in the past decade. And so he's a great resource for all of this. By the way, interviews of Brian and Maurice as well. It's on my YouTube channel. There'll be some links below if you're watching this to access it, or just email me, brett@capitalgainstaxresearch.com, and I can give you the resources so you can watch their interview and understand that. So let's talk a little bit about the next step here, which is the returns for investors. And this is the part where it's exciting because these are excess returns that I believe are durable, as well as going to help with the attainable workforce housing crisis that's going on. So the model that I like best right now with BRD, and we've been able to work with them, is basically about a 15 to 16% return over about a 2-year period of time, with cash flow coming out quarterly. So an example would be $1 million. If you were to lend that money to go do all of these projects, the annual return of about $160,000 over a full year, and it would be paid out quarterly in $40,000. So 4 times a year, it'd be 40, 40, 40. Now, if you did 500,000, of course, you can cut that in half. It'd be about $20,000 per quarter. Now, the downside of this is it's locked up for 2 years. Okay, so it's not liquid. So if you're comparing this to like a DLP Capital, like a lending fund, they're typically, I call it 30, 60, 90-day liquid for their lending fund, and that's paying about 10%. So if you're going for liquidity, or I call it 30, 60, 90-day liquidity, then DLP lending fund's an amazing investment to make. If you're going for more of a higher return, right, then BRD becomes more attractive, right? Because you're looking at about a 5 to 6%. It's like a 50% would be 5%. So this is almost like a 50% more return. In this scenario, it'd be 33%, because if you take 15 by 10, it's like a 33% more cash flow. So that's pretty neat, right? So $1 million makes 100,000. In this scenario, $1 million makes 160,000. So if you're comparing those two things, right? And then it's paid $40,000 per quarter. DLP lending, they pay monthly, right? So that's a little bit better. And so those are kind of two to compare those two. The next thing to do is the other way to do this is an 18% return, but there's no distribution. So if you put $1 million in, you're looking at about an 18% return over a 2-year period of time. So this payout would be actually $360,000, right? Because it's 2 years, 180,000 1 year, 180,000 the second year. So it's simple interest, it's not compounding. So that would happen at the 2-year mark. You put $1 million in, you could have 360,000. So let's talk about reasons why you might want to do this. Well, you might have higher income right now that's happening, or the trust that's happening. You say, hey, look, we'll put $1 million here and we'll delay that income because we don't need it for 2 years, and let's get a bigger payout. So we get that 2% bump, right? Number one. And number two, it might also help to put it into a different bracket. So this is great for like our entrepreneurial clients who are like staying on with their existing companies and getting kind of an earnout and working through this. Meaning you might be working for a couple of years and you still have a high income. And so you can let the trust delay the income to you, right? Which delays the income tax, of course, defers the capital gains tax. And then when you retire, the trust is kicking up higher income all at once. And or if you work less, or you want him to start, right? So it's flexible there. So we want to look at a tax flow, cash flow, debt flow plan, understand that the kind of the whole picture as we're doing this planning. And this BRD gives you that bonus. Or you just might just say, look, Brett, I've got $5 million in the trust. like to put 500,000 or $1 million into this and get the 18%, and the other amounts can go into the different groups that are a little more liquid, right? So those are some thoughts on this. So this is BRD Land. If you have any questions, interest, please let me know. We can set up a time to go through this in more detail, do some more planning. If you're not yet a Deferred Sales Trust or Capital Gains Tax Solutions client, you can still come in as long as you're a credit investor and invest. I have clients that have CDs making, 4 or 5%. I have clients that are, just have cash sitting on the sidelines, or their investments that aren't doing great. We can absolutely set up. The minimum is a $200,000 investment. Okay. And so just keep that in mind. If you have questions, thoughts, reach out to me. Appreciate the opportunity to work with you, to work with BRD Land. Click on the link below. Give me a ring or shoot me an email, Brett@capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to get started. And we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks so much.